Hello and welcome to Starting Points, where one thing leads to another. Now, here's an example. I showed you this book. This is actually the third time I've shown it. Fire and Ice by James Houston, and the designs that he came up with for Steuben glass. And I don't know how it's done. And sometimes things like that are kept secret within the people who know how to do it. Here's an example when I got thinking about it. The glass flowers that were commissioned for Harvard University for their natural sciences. People who collected specimens would often put them into sort of a press, tape them to a page, and maybe a piece of cardboard over that, and another page, and sort of keep them in a pressed down. They would lose their three-dimensional quality. They would also lose the vivid colors. But this process would ensure that they'd be three-dimensional, that the colors would be true to the flower, plant, leaves. In this case, there was a man and his grown son. They worked together making all of these. The man had learned it from his father back through some generations, so they've developed, they know what worked, what doesn't work, and some tricks of the trade. And so I want to show you a few pictures that give you some idea of what they produced. Now, here's a lily, a meadow lily. And that's what it looks like. Now, it tells you something over here as well, that about the lily family, and the name, scientific name, genus and species, are still written in Latin, and then there'd be an initial after it. And when I first encountered that, I thought that L meant Latin, and then I learned that it referred to Linnaeus, who was a Swedish naturalist. More about him later. And so in buds haven't opened up, things like that. Here's an iris. Again, this is a huge family as well, the iris. And the technical aspects of just photographing these was quite an endeavor. This is apple in the rose family. And all of these were named by Carl Linnaeus. They almost, there's no smell to them, but they look like you could touch them. They would be they look alive and real. Now, after looking at this, I looked them up, and I found there's 2 short videos, about 3 minutes each, that have been put out where they take you into Harvard and show you this, how the display's set up and all, and I found that interesting too. Now, for a long time, before the glass blowing came, a long time meaning back, 1750, people used paints to do this, and sometimes painters would have flowers in a painting of famous people or scenes and things like that. But there was a boy born to a family where the father was a painter, and he had learned painting from his father. It was, and so forth, the same thing. And he teaches his sons, all his sons. He shows what he can. This one son, Père Joseph Ridotti, became famous for doing flowers. And you have a sense of 3 dimension, and you have vibrant colors. And he started his interest when he was, 6 years old, and learning about the different flowers and plants in the monastery in the village he was born in, Brussels, Belgium. And he learned from his father until he was 13. And at that point, the father said, "Son, I's no more I can teach you. I'm going to give you a letter of recommendation, and which I'm asking other painters that you might come across to help you. You might have to split wood or carry water for them or something to reimburse them for their time." And so his son goes off, 13 years old. Now, it says here that that was not unusual for that time, that a young person would go off to try to find a place where he could work and make a living. And he eventually ends up in Paris, and eventually he becomes the painter for Marie Antoinette. And after Marie Antoinette, 10 years later, he becomes the painter for Napoleon's Josephine, flowers he's doing. But before he got first recognized, he was recognized by a man who'd written a book about flowers and wanted to have it illustrated. And the man had seen Père Joseph in a garden drawing and saw some of his work, and he made a deal, a contract with him that he would do the illustrations for his book. So he had a breakthrough, and he stayed with flowers. He decided that he was going to do a book of his own, and he was going to do it about lilies. And he painted 486 lilies. Now, this 2-page spread gives you an idea of lots of visuals like this and a certain amount of writing. But I just found his life was, I had a sense of his struggles and his accomplishments, and It he collects the flowers he wants to draw. Then he has botanists, 3 different botanists, to write about them, and he painted each lily, iris or tulip, with watercolors, and then it was an engraver would copy that, scratching tiny dots into a copper plate with a fine tool, and then that engraving would be painted, and the printer put the sheet of paper on top and made a copy in his press, and maybe some other color was added, and there it was. Now, it took him 14 years. And so how did he finance things for that? Well, people subscribed to him. And each year they'd get about 35 paintings. So it was pretty neat to look forward to that for 14 years. Another, I don't know whether they came every 2 weeks or however, but I think probably in one segment of the pages. Well, it's to me, this is a story of following one's interest. Well, I have 2 other botanists who did just that. Linnaeus, Carl Linnaeus, who was Swedish. His father was a minister. His mother's father was a minister. And they both felt that that should be his profession. Father to son and so on. But he was not interested. He was interested in plants. And from an early age, and just fascinated. And not only plants, but birds and wildlife and rocks and things like that too. His interests were broad, and but there was some tension in the family because he wasn't doing well in school except for natural science, but finally he makes a point with his dad, and the dad gives him the okay, and the struggles aren't over. Different people help him, and he doesn't forget that, and what he does is quite remarkable. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful biography. I have a real sense of his struggles, his journeys into Lapland, his marriage, children which died at early ages, and it's a moving biography. Beloved botanist. And here's another. This is a story of George Washington Carver. He, like Carl, got interested in flowers like at 5 years old. Was fascinated by plants and flowers, and when he saw someone else that had a painting in their house, and he realized you could make paintings, and he used juice from different plants and tried to make paintings, and he wanted an education. He was black. He could get the nearest black school for black people was 8 miles away. And So he left at an early age. I think he was maybe 8 and went there. I should remember, I've read this book probably aloud 10 times to different classes. And it's such a remarkable story as well of the struggles and the persistency of what he wanted to do. I've marked a photo in here. They've got several photos and lots of drawings and maps, and it's a fascinating book. Here he is, a grown man. He's painting flowers. He's had 4 of his flower paintings accepted in a show, and now my copy has gotten a little banged up in time, and that reminds me. I looked this book up to see if it was available. I couldn't find it being available. I finally found it under Adrian Stoutenberg. None of the libraries in Victoria had it, and I've had it for quite a long while. Then Thrift Books, a company called Thrift Books, showed a number of her titles, other titles, and they showed this book, but it was unavailable. And I thought, oh, and then it said 102 people have requested it. Now, most of the times when they have requests, they might have 2 or 3. But 102 people requested this book. So that tells me that this book needs to be reprinted. Well, at least I interpret it as a sign that this book needs to be made available. Think of all the people that are in the natural sciences, and this is one of the leading proponents, names in the history of natural science. It also said in that little write-up that they get about 1 a month, which would mean 102 people. You might have to wait more than eight years to get a copy. Well, anyway, the good news is that Scholastics this book has reissued. This book is very reasonably priced. In the U.S., $5.99 it says, and it's got all the everything, and the story of one person who persists and what they accomplish in the field that they're interested in. Well, thanks for joining me. Until next time, bye for now.